Uh-huh. It is a great day. That's right. I like those dance moves, Johan. That's pretty good over there. Welcome back, risers and thrivers. It is a great day to make it a great day. We hope you loved our last show. We featured Kevin Hines, the world-renowned inspirational speaker and suicide prevention advocate, who he himself had taken the leap off the Golden Gate Bridge and miraculously survived through this crazy twist of fates. And he is here to share his story and to advocate for all of those who are feeling this dire need and pondering suicide. And really listen to that show. It was a phenomenal show, shared really impactful tools that we can all implement today to save a life and to ensure that everyone has a chance to be here tomorrow. And today, oh my heavens, am I ever excited for this show? We are featuring Johan van Vurren. He has taken TikTok by storm, risers and thrivers. If you have not come across his powerful videos, please check him out. The man from somewhere. You can find him on Instagram, TikTok, everywhere on social media. He is this truly raw and real and powerful human who shares so much inspiration and empowerment with our world. He's an advocate for mental health, and I find him an inspiration for men's mental health and just an inspiration overall. I'm really happy to have you here today with us, Johan. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, gosh, it really means a lot. And Johan is here today. He's going to really open up the conversation all about, childhood trauma and the impact that has on all of us. And we go back to our roots and our development and these small things that not necessarily small. I don't mean to say it like that, but we all consider trauma to be perhaps, abuse or these big grand versions of trauma, when it isn't even necessarily that. There's trauma that happens to all of us in our own lives, and we kind of push it down, right? And we kind of adopt these coping mechanisms. And Johan's going to take us back and really talk about this childhood trauma that he himself experienced and how it's impacted where he is today. Johan, can you take us back to your childhood, please?
Sure. I actually only discovered really the truth behind trauma for myself within the last 10 years, and realized that actually what I needed to heal was traumas that were suppressed from things that happened to me as young as being in my mother's womb, to be honest. And those traumas basically directed my belief system, because your childhood, as we all know, your childhood beliefs are formed within the first 6 years of childhood. And those suppressions comes out as different things. So I basically, when I was in the womb, my mom got pregnant very, very early. She was the youngest out of 7 children. And for my mom back in those days in South Africa, it was a big shame, or she would have been shamed really big time, because she wasn't married. It was back in the 70s. And especially in South Africa, it would have been massively frowned upon. So my mum actually tried to terminate the pregnancy by downing bottles of vodka. So from a fetus stage, I had to fight for survival, to basically live, So, and that trauma I experienced there at an adult age, I discovered that basically formed I am not good enough belief in me, that I wasn't wanted. So, and that led on to me self-sabotaging a lot of stuff in my life, because I believed that as soon as I achieved something or something good came along, that I wasn't good enough to have that in my life, or I didn't deserve that. So that was a massive, massive trauma from that sort of young fetus stage, that I had to literally go back to that era. And I did that.
Right. You're really right. It's all of the trauma experts right now are really talking about how these impacts come not just from the fetus time, but even prior, this intergenerational idea of trauma that passes on to us, and all of this that impacts our own responses to the life that we see around us, right? And having that awareness is so important and so impactful on our journeys. And so, it sounds like gosh, in the fetus, do you really think this impacted? But yes, these are so impactful on our own personal development and our own personal growth. This is powerful. So please continue.
Yeah, so actually, and like you just mentioned, it goes further back, because I actually also discovered that a lot of the guilt that I was carrying was my grandfather's, that went back generations before me, that I actually literally go, do you know what, this is not mine, it's not my responsibility. And I had to give it back to them in that sort of phase for them to deal with. It wasn't my responsibility to carry that trauma, that guilt. And that suppressed me to grow as a human, as the being who I wanted to become. So that was that part there that I had to almost disconnect from. And I did that through EFT therapy, which was a massive healing process for me, and also the meditation, because I do a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. He was a huge impact in my life when I discovered his meditations and his work.
Let's pause for 1 sec. Let's just take it back a little bit more. So let's take it back to that childhood. So you're growing up, and as I understand, you grew up in South Africa. Is that right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. Yes. So, in that part of Wales, the South African part where I grew up in, for boys, it was very, very much frowned upon for boys to show emotion, show weakness. It was either big boys don't cry. It was that sort of mentality that we grew up upon. And there was a lot of bullying going on. So I was a very loving child. And then also during my time when I grew up, in those sort of first 6-7 years, my dad that brought me up wasn't my biological father. And I only found that out at the age of about 8-9. And that also was a huge trauma for me. Although, but the funny thing about that is in those development years, I was almost, what was the correct word that can be used? Like, I was almost like spoiled in a way, because my mum always feared that if she's going to punish me in a way, that my dad would go and tell her off, because she would take out her frustration of not being with the man that she wanted to have the child with. And my dad wasn't punishing me either, because he was scared that my mum was going to be on his back. So I got away with a lot of things, and I sort of rebelled against a lot of things that was later on pressed upon me, so, and then obviously, because I was given free reins in a way, I was bullied later on in life because of things that I expected that should have come to me. And I almost, like, what's the word? What's the correct word? It's when you feel privileged to it, you should have it in a way. So,
entitlement.
Entitled. That's the correct word. So I felt entitled to a lot of things, which was absolutely not the truth, And like I say, when I went through those traumas of finding out that my parents lied to me in a way, that my dad wasn't my dad, that was a big shock for me in my system as well, where I rebelled against that, and I went completely the opposite way of feeling let down, hurt. It was huge, So that was a big. Those two were specifically major things in my life, and because I was very sensitive, I was bullied a lot for showing weakness not weakness, but in those eyes of South Africans, it was classed and seen as being weak.
How did you express that hurt at the time when you found out that huge shift, that the man that you thought was your father wasn't your father? How did you express that hurt? How did you experience that hurt? Did you talk about it with anybody?
I didn't. I suppressed it. I completely suppressed it. I kept it in. And my mom actually said she saw me change from being an open, loving boy to completely going the opposite way of shutting out the world. And I did. And that's where a lot of the self-destruction in my life came from.
What were those walls that you built as those coping mechanisms?
I would literally I would let someone get close to me, but as soon as I feel they are at that point where they are close, I would then completely close off, because my subconscious would tell me that it's not safe. I'm not safe in this environment. I'm going to get hurt. Then I would completely withdraw from that individual, whether it was friends, girlfriends, wife, etc. I would completely drawn away from that relationship, as to say. So I grew up very lonely in a sense, or in a way as well, because of the trauma that I experienced.
Mm-hmm. And these self-destructive patterns, as you describe it. And
Exactly.
when did you start to realize, when was there this shift and awakening that perhaps these patterns in relationships and these behaviors that you were experiencing were all rooted in some common theme? How did that evolve?
So that came about, like I said earlier, about 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago, because I actually read The Secret way before that. And I grew up religious, Christian in South Africa, because that's the main religion in South Africa, big Christian population. And then when I moved to the UK back in 97, I then discovered loads of different ethnicities, religions, backgrounds, and in the first sort of 18, 19, 20 years of my life in South Africa, if you showed any interest or just being intrigued by anything beyond religion, you were an outcast. It was frowned upon. It would be like you're from the devil, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't that you wanted to change your religion, but just to try and understand it. Even it was very much frowned upon. So when I came to the UK, and I then was basically in a different environment, and I didn't have any of these other sort of influences of parents and cousins and aunties and uncles around me, I had free reign to sort of go, do you know what? I'm going to actually find out, why do Muslims believe this? And why do atheists believe this? And why do spiritualists believe this? And at the end of the day, once I opened up my vision and I expanded out, I came to the conclusion that I would probably say that 90% of everything out there is connected and the same. Yes, there's differences and there's variations, but a lot of it is the same, and that for me was a massive, massive eye opener. And then as life carried on, I sort of became to the realization that the problem isn't everyone else. The problem is within me, because I started, as you get older, you become wiser. And I started realizing and seeing that these patterns keep sort of repeating itself one after the other after the other. So I delved into that. And that's when I read The Secret. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. I understand that you can sort of manifest things, and things work out. If you sort of think positively, things will change. And if you think negatively, you will just attract these negative things. And I sort of half-heartedly went into it until I actually discovered the EFT therapy and Dr. Joe's work. Wow. And that's when the penny really dropped. And I was like, okay.
Let's talk about that in a sec. Did you ever meet your father? I'm curious.
So, yeah,
your real biological father?
Yeah. So when I was 17, it's a bizarre story. I was 17. I was dating this girl who was 18. And I never shied away from the fact that my dad wasn't my dad. I wouldn't blurt it out to the world. But if it came up in a conversation with someone that I was close, I'd be open about it. And I knew his name and his surname. And I told her. And she told her mum that night. And it turned out that her mum and my biological father's sister were best mates.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That almost is like this was almost meant to be. Like you were connected.
Exactly.
This.
Yeah, that was
fortuitous, that's incredible.
Through that I got to meet him. Yeah. I met him then when I was 18. Wow. Yeah, I met him when I was 18. And then I met, he's got a son and a daughter. And funny enough, his son that he's got, my half brother with him, is almost to the day a year younger than me.
Wow.
And my sister is 5 years younger, yeah.
And are you close to him now?
So with him, not so much, no, because he's even my brother. Me and my brother are close now. Who's his son?
I see.
So we're quite close. He lives in New Zealand, and we speak quite often on the phone. He used to live all over the world. He's in IT, so he doesn't have to be based at some place. He works where the money basically takes him. So currently he's in New Zealand, but he was in the UK for a long time, and Yeah, but we only really connected and got close later on in life, because by the time when I met my biological father, he made promises that he will introduce me to the rest of the family, and year after year after year, it didn't happen until a point where I was ready to move on again. I was 21. I met him when I was 17, and by the age of 21, he still hasn't made that point. And at that stage in my life, I was becoming an adult, and I was now ready to move on to the next phase and the next stage in my life. And then bizarrely, they had a break-in in the house where he lived, and he got shot, and he was literally in intensive care. My mum called me up, and she was like, he might not make it. Do you want to go and see him? And I was like, well, okay, let's go and see him. And the only reason I met my brother and sister is because when we went to the hospital, his wife was there.
Wow.
So when I walked in, it was almost like we could have been twins at his age when I was 21. And yeah, so that's how life works, you know. So
all of these things aligned, right? There's a greater power
exactly,
behind so much of this.
Yeah.
And tell me about how you adapted to not being told the truth and to almost being misled by your parents, if that's how you felt. I'm not sure, but tell me about that process of, you know, how you've established that relationship or kept that relationship with your parents, how you forgave them. If you can expand a bit on that, that would be great.
So when I was told, my grandmother actually told me when I was 9 or 10. She told me that my dad wasn't my dad.
Your grandmother told you.
My grandmother told me, yeah. And going back to the South Africans back in those days, my grandmother was very conservative, and she believed and thought that my parents were never going to tell me. So she took it upon herself to tell me. So I straight away, when my parents came back from wherever they were, they found out, because obviously they saw something wasn't quite right. My grand told them, but I took my dad to one side, you know, and there was lots of tears and stuff. And I just said to him, at the end of the day, you know, I don't know anyone else. You are my dad. He was there since the day I was born, you know. So I basically sat him down. I said, there's no other dad for me out there. You might not be biological, but to me, you are my dad. You are my father. So there wasn't really a divide between me and him as much as it was between me and my mum. But I think that did go deeper to the level of me fighting for survival in the womb. That's why I think that subconsciously was a bigger sort of blow to the gut for me to overcome. But again, that didn't come to fruition until much later in my life, that I sort of went, okay. So, I mean, I made peace with it on a superficial level at that age. And then obviously when I met my father at the age of 17, things between me and my parents were kind of, you know, just, I would say normal, as to say, on a superficial level. It wasn't really deep, because also South Africans are, back in those days where they grew up, were very black and white. You know, things are either right or things are wrong. There's no gray ground or middle ground for anything. It's either this way or that way, and that's it. So and again, it was only about 2019 when my brother, there's another brother of mine who lives in Vietnam, and he got married there, that we all went to the wedding, and I sat my mum down on the beach, and we had a very, very deep conversation about it, you know, and tears were flowing, and we literally had to go into that. Although I forgave her through my therapy and everything else, I had to still physically do that with her in person. And it was only in 2019 that we actually overcame that hurdle, as to say, to complete the process almost, and to make it come full circle. I would, definitely say that.
These moments of these childhood trauma experiences, it's almost as if it's rooted in attachment, but a lack of basic needs being met at that time, you know. And in that time when you found out about your father, what do you think you needed that could have been put into place at that time, Johan, that would have alleviated the trauma response of burying those emotions And of all of those coping mechanisms, of the walls and the self-destructive mechanisms that you then adopted, what do you think could have happened way back when, here in childhood at 8 or 9, when you uncovered that information? At least not even talking so much about what happened with the survival in the womb, but what could have happened? How else could that have unfolded that would have responded in you not forming that trauma response?
I think they should have been honest from the start, as far back as when I was born. The personally, if I was in that situation or come across that situation myself in my life, I would let that child know from as far back as they can remember that, yes, I'm here as the father figure, although I'm not your biological father. I think that would have been a much healthier environment for me to grow up in as the one I had. I won't change it for anything because I won't be the person I am today. But if anything could be changed or made simpler, I think honesty would have been a much better policy going forward, and just having an easier life and an easier transition going from there to here.
And for all of us parents who are trying to do the best job that we can, and our children get in these situations, I think the number one question that we always need to ask is, how are you feeling about it?
Yeah.
What did this create within you, this experience? And create that safe space for our kids to be really real about those experiences and validate their feelings and own that perhaps as parents we didn't create the best experience that we could have for our kids, right? But just to create that space for them to have this open forum and safe space to talk about it and express their emotions and be really clear that these emotions and the expression of any emotions that come up, right, is a healthy expression of emotions. And those emotions all serve us, because when we conceal those emotions, we also don't create the affected behavioral response that's supposed to come in tow with those emotions. And so when you experience that sadness, right, to find out, wow, my earth just shattered, my world just shattered all around me, this is crushing, but how would I adapt to this at such a young age, right? Just to say, how are you feeling through this, Johan? And just really take it back to the basics, and creating that safe space, I think, is so important. And I think might help us all in peeling back those layers and the onions that we all try to form to protect ourselves, to preserve ourselves, these coping mechanisms and these walls that we adapt to keep ourselves safe, as you said, in relationships in the future. You would move forward and then you'd back out because you didn't feel it was a safe environment, given what you had experienced at such a young age. And that makes a lot of sense. But I think that simple question of, how does this make you feel? How are you feeling inside? And making that okay, I think could also be a really impactful
100%. Because the thing is, when we grew up, and this still rings in my ears, my mums, my dad, my uncles, my aunties always used to say to us, children are there to be seen and not heard. So that is a belief that we had from 2-3-year-olds up until the day we left school. Children were seen and not heard. So it is so vital. I do that with my kids now, especially my daughter. She's only 6, and if anything bothers her or whatever, I constantly and will always ask her, how does that make you feel? Tell me about it. Tell me about the feeling, where it is in your body. Where do you feel it? Why does it make you feel like that? Do you want to talk about it? Express how you feel. If sometimes she can't express, she will just shout and she will lash out, and I will let her calm down, and then we'll talk about that, and we'll go into why that has happened and where does that come from, because that's another very vital point. Is a lot of the things that comes up for me and has come up is a superficial layer, because there's always something deeper underneath that emotion that comes up that is suppressed.
Of course.
And that's what I do constantly with myself. If, say, for instance, I drive down the road and someone cut me up and I'm in a bit of a rush, I would still sometimes lose my temper, but it's the awareness, like you said earlier. I'm very aware now that if something happens in within myself, I'm straight away aware of that event that has just occurred, and I go into it going, right, what is that trying to teach me? Where does that originate from? Yes, I might be angry at that guy that's just cut me up, and yes, what if I'm going to be 5 minutes late? But why has that happened? Why am I so touchy about that? And a lot of the times it will come up as, if I'm late, I'm going to not be good enough to do my job there, or there's always deeper and superficial layers that you need to go through to get to the truth behind or below what.
But you're right. It's all about sparking that curiosity, right?
Yeah.
And that exploration of self-development and personal growth, and just asking the question, why did I react that way? Where is that rooted, right? Because it does come from somewhere. We choose our partners for a reason, we respond to certain things for a reason, and really uncovering those and identifying why. And you hit it on the nail at the very beginning of this conversation when you said it really stems from this point of worthiness and self-worth, right? And self-value that we often diminish in ourselves because of these experiences. We feel less valued. We feel that we have less self-worth, right? Because of these experiences. And so in turn, we adopt these other coping mechanisms to create our own self-worth. We keep ourselves really busy, or we try to be the smartest in the class, or, whatever we do, but we adopt these different mechanisms to try to prove our self-worth to ourselves more so than even to anybody else. But those those coping mechanisms, gosh, they can eat us alive. And I think I experienced that in my own journey, right before I was sick with terminal cancer at the age of 35. I just burned the candle too thin. I always mess up expressions, gosh. But I through my own coping mechanisms, gosh, I was so go. I was just stuck on autopilot. And it's these experiences that kind of just wake us up to be like, wow, there's so much more beneath that surface layer that you were talking about. And that's where these powerful awakenings and these powerful shifts can really come into play to really experience this what I like to call this enlightenment, this phase of enlightenment where life is just somehow so much richer. And achieving that, it's so powerful. So tell us, please, Johan, about these steps that you've taken with meditation, with the amazing Dr. Joe Dispenza, and your other tools that you've used to really experience, these shifts that you've created for yourself.
So for me personally, it was about the forgiveness of detaching myself to events. Like I had to literally, with EFT, which is the tapping technique, that took me back into the womb, and I had to go and physically forgive my mum and basically tell that unborn baby that, look at where you are going to be in so many years. You're going to be safe, you're going to be well, you're going to strive, you're going to have a wonderful life, you're going to have children. And I had to change that belief and paint a different picture, as to say, during that session of going back in to do that. And it was the same with when I was told about my dad. I had to go back into that event and, like I said, reconstruct that event to have a better outcome and a more positive outcome. But it's the same. Whilst I did that, I had to physically go back to every trauma event that I had and go and forgive those that I felt did wrong by me. Because I know it's very hard to forgive certain things in life, but if you don't forgive that person or that event, you will always carry that. And I actually look back to my life, and it was, and I said this to someone the other day, it's if you look at the old movies and someone got married, they had these cans behind the car that when they drove off, all these cans were dragging behind the car.
Yeah.
I had like chains with massive weights with all of these events that was literally holding me back from becoming become the person I want to be and who I who I'm striving to be. I had to literally go to each chain and go, right, I'm going to deal with you now. Cut that off. Go to that event. Change that event. Forgive that person.
Yeah.
Forgive that event. And that was a massive.
And you're so right, because holding on to that anger, there's an expression that I'll probably mess up again, but quote, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting another person to die, right? Yeah. And it's so true. And it is like this lead weight, and it pulls us down and it drowns us and it leaves us gasping for air, and it doesn't impact the other person. It doesn't impact anybody else, right? But it's like the ball and chain pulling us down, just like you described with the cans behind the wedding car, and it just pulls 100%. Us down. And so, yeah, we all need to go through this journey of forgiveness, because it doesn't impact that other person. It has nothing to do with the other person, but it has to do with how it sets your soul and your spirit aflight. And I think that's so powerful. You also really talked about the reframe in what you were talking about there, and reframing the story, right? And I talk a lot about that with my coaching clients too. It's such an impactful part of the path, right? To go through that journey and to actually reframe those negative experiences that we've had, because from that negative experience, no matter what it is, it has served us in different ways. It, like you said from the beginning of the show, it made me who I am today. It's given you these character traits, and it projected you onto this path. And for that, there are reasons to be thankful for that negative experience, and pulling out those reasons that negative experience physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually served you, right, is so important in that reframe, and talking about that idea of forgiveness and saying, this is what I experienced. This is how I felt because of this experience. Really openly, when you do that reframe, talking about how you felt emotionally deep within the trauma that was at that time. Right? Yeah. Really physically opening up on that. And then the reframe of, but gosh, that served me and that propelled me to now be where I am today. That's all what the reframe is all about. And I think that's really powerful how you discuss that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it worked for me. So, it definitely turned my life around and made things just happen. But then also, when I've done that, and then going into the meditation side of things, with especially with Dr. Joe's work, I actually realized that I already have done that in my life without realizing it from a young age. Because as a young boy, I looked at in South Africa, we used to have these absolutely fabulous cigarette commercials that used to come up in shows, but they were just, why I'm saying they're fabulous is because the guy that used to play it was this macho hero guy that would come on horseback through almost like a Western movie, and he would light his Gunston cigarette and drive off, gallop off into the sunset, and it was one of those commercials that I always that is who I'm going to be one day, and I believed it I saw it in my head, and I believed it in my heart that is exactly who I'm going to become. I'm going to be this actor or that model guy on the horse, and today one of the things that I do in my life is I am a very successful commercial model and actor, and I've done that for over 20 odd years now, and I'm doing a job for the Czech Republic and Slovakia. I'm the head of the face of the lottery. I have done for 7-8 years now, and I actually manifested that job from the age of 6, without realizing it. But once I started doing meditation and found Dr. Joe's work, I was like, actually, this it works because I have already done that.
Well, and that's such a powerful.
I love Dr. Joe's work so much. Sorry, go on.
That's okay. I think we've got a little delay here. But no, I was just saying that's really powerful too, that ability to manifest, right? But those inspirational role models, whether it's from a cigarette commercial, just the idea of that guy on the horse, going through, those inspirational role models are so impactful on our journey. And I think that's really important to seek out as well. Maybe not in the form of a cigarette commercial, but, the idea of the guy on the horse, I love that, right? Just the freedom that comes with that too. right? Those
Yeah.
inspirational role models in whatever form they come in, cigarette commercials or
Exactly.
whatever. I think that's really, really powerful. But you also said too that, when you started doing Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, you already were doing this stuff without realizing it. And that's really that's really, really, really an important piece that we don't talk about enough on this show or elsewhere, because there are so many treatment modalities out there in our great world, right? There are so many healing modalities. But to be really, really honest, a lot of us will go to that with our minds, right? And we'll get all the information and we'll know all the information, but it doesn't sink in and it doesn't necessarily connect. And so,
Exactly.
yeah. And so you almost have to really find that quiet time, that safe space within yourself, right? The calm, find the calm in the storm to hear that stillness, because we already have all of the answers within us.
Oh yeah.
We
100%.
can do all of these modalities with whatever gurus and whatever experts, but we really have the wisdom within ourselves. We just need to silence everything around us to hear it.
Yeah. Do you know why for me personally, I'm very analytical, and I think a lot of men are. We want to. I mean, I can remember as a child, I wanted to open up the TV because I couldn't believe how these people are inside that tiny box. It was something that boggled my mind. And as men, we want to physically understand something before we believe it.
I
And
see.
Dr. Joe really goes into the science of why we meditate and how to do it. Once I understood that, I could then look back and go, actually, do you know what? That makes sense. And that's why it really just resonated with me, because I understood what he was talking about, because he explained science and everything, the theory behind it, in such a way for me that I was like, okay, the penny has dropped now, I'm on board with this. And actually, looking back, I've already done that, because the mind sends the signal out. But if you don't believe it in here, this will attract everything to you. If you send this signal out, this signal will bring it back. So
and just to make those connections, to draw those connections, I think that's powerful. And he's such an incredible force too. Gosh, and he's a chiropractor by trade as well, one of my colleagues.
Exactly.
So I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
And so tell us about now how you live your life today, Johan, from all of these experiences that you've done.
So what I do now, it's I've been in Scotland only for 2 years now, and I've got to thank the pandemic really for that. That sort of almost forced us to move up to Scotland, because I was actually going through my divorce at the time, just before the pandemic hit, and we just decided together that financially it'd be better for us to live up north. It'll be cheaper. Her family is from up here anyway, with sort of family support for the kids, etc. And that's why we moved up. So I grew up in South Africa on farms, and I always had space around me. So when we moved up, and I'm up in the Highlands, when I've not had my daughter to look after, I was literally out in nature, hiking, just being by myself, and because everyone is locked in their houses, I had all the space around me to go on these adventures and almost discover myself, in a way. And then also what I felt was, I started doing TikTok out of boredom, really, at the beginning of the pandemic, like a lot of adults out there started doing, just to sort of waste a bit of time and pass the time, really. So I started doing like a little bit of inspirational stuff on there, and then actually the following started flowing in, and I felt like, you know what, this could be a platform that I can use to not just quote quotes, but what I found really resonates with people out there is, you can go on Instagram and you can read a really positive quote, but 3-4 scrolls later, that quote is gone. Now, what I try and do is, if you get that message across with authenticity and feeling, and people can resonate with that fellow human being, whether it's a man or a woman, a child, but they can resonate with that emotion that you can bring across the screen, it's got so much more impact, and the amount of messages and just gratefulness from the society out there that I've had back, which I'm so humbled about. My goal was always just, if I can help one other person out there, my job's done. But the amount of messages and stuff I get daily, is just, I'm so humbled by it. But it's really helping people out there who is desperate for some sort of connection, and it's like you said yourself, there's so much out there. People don't know where to turn to. And if a 15-second clip or a 20-second clip just can help that person through the day, that's my goal. And that's what I wanted to achieve. There's nothing in there or hidden agenda behind that, but it was literally just me reaching out to people who might be in my situation, that they don't want to talk about it, or they can't talk about it, or they feel stuck, but this person who they don't know from Adam they can resonate with that, and they can connect with that, and that can literally drag them out of the depths of where they are and give them that kickstart to go, actually, do you know what? I want to turn my life around, and I'm going to use this little bit of a clip as an inspiration, or whatever the case might be, and that's basically where and how it all happened for me, and how I'm giving back now.
Well, I think, and it's deeper than that too, right? Everything comes down to this fundamental idea of human connection. And we can all feel so alone in these hard times, right? And we can all question our emotions and have self-judgment, harsh self-judgment, right? And then when you open up one of these inspirational videos that you do, it's just another light on the path that says, gosh, I'm here too, right? I'm going through the same journey. Your videos, like I said from the get-go, they're so real, they're so raw. And it's like you're a friend to the 1.2 million followers that you have, so that all these people don't feel so alone. And it's a really beautiful gift that you share. And I'm really honored to have you here today. Can I ask a question? Can you please share some lasting words of wisdom with our audience? Maybe one powerful takeaway that our audience can take with them.
The key to anything in your whole life is just being aware. If you are aware of whatever situation you're in, whether it's good, whether it's bad, if you can just stay aware in anything, that is key. And I find that key to my whole journey, from where I've come up to where I am now, is just being aware in everything. That will bring you back down into reality and back into the moment. And it's in the moment where the magic happens. It's not in the present, the future, or in the past. It's in the present.
The power of right here, right now. That's right.
Absolutely. 100%.
Thank you for being with us. Risers and Thrivers, we hope you loved today's show. Where can our viewers find you, Johan?
So I'm on Instagram and on TikTok as the Man From Somewhere, or just Man From Somewhere. Those are the two main platforms that I use. So yeah, just there.
I knew you would love this show, Risers and Thrivers. Thanks for being here with us. All the best. Have a great day. And we'll be back at 2:00 actually with another great segment. All the best. See you there.
Take care. Bye now.